Welcome to the messy middle of entrepreneurship, unfiltered and unapologetic. Uncensored Entrepreneurs, hosted by Star Cod, Robert Wall, and Tina Torres-Wilson, brings you real stories from the trenches of building a business. Those late nights, hard lessons, big wins, and everything in between. This is where the truth about entrepreneurship lives. No fluff, no filters, just raw, honest conversations with founders who have lived it. So, if you're over the highlight reel and you're ready for the real deal, hit play. Most people avoid estate planning until it's too late. Wills, trusts, powers of attorney, it all sounds boring, overwhelming, and far off in the distance until something happens. But today's guest is flipping the script. Cecilia Amo is an estate planning attorney, author, and founder of Amo Law Legacy Planning. With more than 20 years of experience, she's a personal family lawyer who makes legacy planning relatable, approachable, and yes, even fun. Cecilia is a proud nerd who uses stories from Harry Potter, Marvel, Star Wars, and more to help millennials and Gen Xers understand how to protect what matters most: their assets, their loved ones, and their values. If you've ever been putting this off, this part of your life as an adult, this episode will change how you think about death, legacy, and the business of protecting your life's work. Cecilia, welcome to Uncensored Entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about how estate planning can actually be not so overwhelming and be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And it typically just seems to be something that, again, lighthearted, we just don't want to talk about it, or it's something that we put off and we ignore, but it's so essential. So really excited to have you on today's show. I know for myself, the rest of my co-hosts, we want to hear a lot about not just the business itself, but how you fell into this niche of making something that in the past has not been so fun, and you've made it a little more relatable topic.
Oh, thank you. I passed the bar in 2006. I have been an attorney for almost 20 years. My first job was with Johnny Cochran's law firm in Los Angeles. I was really blessed because I went to the same law school as the only female attorney on the O.J. Simpson defense team, Sharon Chapman Holly. And so she was looking for a law clerk for the summer. I interviewed. I had been working as a paralegal during the day and going to law school at night. And she really liked that I had practical experience. And then they kept me on after the summer. I took the bar, passed it, got sworn in, and the next day they threw me into a deposition. So it was a very intense beginning to my career.
Wow.
Throwing you into the wolves immediately.
Oh, absolutely. Because that is how trial attorneys do it. They are very intense. Litigation is very high stress, very confrontational. So you always have to be at the top of your game. So I did that for a few years. And litigation, trial work, it's so much fun in your 20s. And then when you get to your 30s, you just slow down. You're like, oh my gosh, do I really want to be working 60 hours a week? I was about to get married, and then I had some health issues, and then my husband had some health issues, and I was like, I can't do this. I need to find something else to do with my law degree. I went into nonprofit work a bit. I was on the board for the nonprofit that runs the largest anime convention in North America, Anime Expo. So I had some experience there. I've always been a nerd. I've been going to conventions since I was a teenager. But those two things were not the same life. I had my nerd life and I had my professional life. And those things did not come together. I think for a lot of us, especially entrepreneurs, right? Founders, CEOs, you project this image of yourself that you want the world to see. It's a scary thing to let people see your whole authentic self, the parts that make you feel vulnerable. And growing up as a nerd, now it's cool, but it was not cool in the 90s and the 2000s.
That's true. It's a brand now, right? It wasn't a brand back then.
Now it's like you want to brag about you being a nerd and you going to all of these anime, Comic-Con, and all the things.
Yeah, now it's cool. When I would take off work and they would ask me where I was going, I would say things like, I'm going to a Japanese media conference where they're going to have some arts and music performances.
That is funny. So, Cecilia, were you already into real estate law at that time? And if not, how did you transition into real estate law? And I understand that it's something you recommended for your peers as well. Share that with us.
Yeah, so I mentioned myself and my husband, we were going through some unexpected health issues in our mid 30s. It's crazy because you don't realize how healthy you are in your 20s till you get to your 30s and 40s. But it was during the pandemic that I was able to connect with my mentor, Allie Katz. She founded the Personal Family Lawyer Network. It's a group of attorneys. I like to call it my guild for anyone who plays D&D or
I like it. I've got a nerd side of me as well. I keep it hidden from time to time, but yeah.
well, it's a group of attorneys who their primary focus is estate planning, wills, trusts, planning for death, but approaching it from a heart-centered relational lawyering approach. So instead of it being a documents first and only approach, which is what you see a lot in the industry, especially with platforms like LegalZoom and all the DIY things, those things focus just on creating documents, but nothing about the outcome or what really matters. So our approach makes the whole process a lot more human, a lot more meaningful. It aligns better with what people actually want to happen. I've reviewed a lot of estate plans, and one common thing I find is that I'll explain, hey, this is how it works. This is what would happen if you became incapacitated or died. And they'll be like, wait, I never said that to the attorney, or I didn't know it would be like that. And it's because there's not that intentional, let me explain this to you, let me explain your decisions. Most people, they rush through the process because it is a documents first volume business, and they walk away with some documents, but not really peace of mind. They're just hoping it will work. But when you have an attorney who's going to explain things to you in a way that makes sense, and really you can feel the care they care about what's going to happen with your life and with your loved ones, that brings clarity that leads to true peace of mind.
Wow. I love this so much. I talk a lot about heart-centered work. And so the fact that you brought that in to, again, something like you said, that's very documents first. I have a real estate business as well, but even on my coaching side, we deal with contracts all the time. And it's such a document first thing when it comes to let's sit down, let's do paperwork, let's get everything contractually together and sound. And then sometimes the story comes later, right? And so I think it's so important to sit down and really understand your client's needs and why they're doing what they're doing. So often, even with my own mother, you end up with a will and all of these things put together. And then later questions start to arise. What's this for? Or why did we do this? Why did they ask this question? I don't know. I just checked a box or I wasn't sure what to put here. And so all these uncertain things left open. I love that you've even integrated that into this practice. So that was the big shift. You started to do that. And then you alluded to it a little bit earlier on how you were also trying to appeal to some genres that typically aren't even thinking about these things, right? Most of our audience, they never think about these things until it's too late, or they start thinking about a living will when they encounter some health problem. Talk to us a little bit about that integration. We hope you're enjoying this conversation as much as we are. One thing we've learned through building our own businesses and from the stories we hear on this podcast is that podcasting can be one of the most powerful tools for growth, but only when it's done strategically. That's why we're such fans of So True. It's a podcast strategy and production agency that helps entrepreneurs create shows that lead to real results, audience growth, aligned leads, and increased sales. So, if you're thinking about starting a podcast or you want to get better results from the one that you already have, check them out at sotruemedia.com. That's sotruemedia.com. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
I think estate planning is the thing most of us who are millennials or Gen Xers think is only for old people, right? It's something you do when you're retired or you think you're about to die. But life can happen at any moment. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. And it's not just about death, it's also about incapacity. In our generation, recently, there have been rising statistics for earlier deaths, heart attacks, cancer, those kinds of things. It's really concerning. About a year and a half into having joined the personal family lawyer group, my guild, I just kept seeing estate planning lessons in everything I was watching. I'd be watching X-Men 97 and Magneto came with this will, quote unquote. And I'm like, that's not how a will works. I was watching WandaVision and Wanda was like, but I'm Vision's next of kin. No, you're not married. So I started thinking about this and I was like, you know what? There's actually a way to explain estate planning to people in a way that's more relatable through these pop culture references. So as an experiment, I went to my local anime pop culture con, really small con, set up a table. I'm going to just show up as my whole self, not as attorney Cecilia, not as just nerd Cecilia, but as some just authentically my whole self. I brought some fun pamphlets like estate planning lessons from Harry Potter, Star Wars, and I was really amazed with how people engaged with me and asked questions. And it just opened up this whole new thing where estate planning wasn't this boring, scary thing. They saw someone who liked what they liked. And that was something that made me a safer person to talk about. Hey, I've got a bunch of board games that I care about, or Funkos, all those things. And things they might not bring up with a traditional attorney, the kind you imagine is on TV, right? The hard, no nonsense, won't care about your comic book collection kind of thing.
That's so true. And because you came into true brand alignment, right? By bringing all those elements together. And that is so essential because most people, they absolutely don't know how to know, like, and trust you unless it's maybe a family referral, or sometimes it's by fear, right? Seeing the same attorney blast things online all the time, putting the fear in you that you have to get this done. But you're actually bringing it together with your element. I've seen some of your work at Comic-Con. Obviously, your work started there, right? And then I brought my daughter to the last Comic-Con locally here. We're like in a booth with a family law practice is not the last thing I would ever expect to see rounding the corner at one of these events. But how cool. And I would imagine that because you have stepped into this, that a lot of people probably reach out to you, just even the convention itself, right? How many of those businesses that are putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into their business and brand probably don't even have a plan?
Yes, absolutely. I always get people who are like, this is the last thing I expected to see here, or this has been on my mind. This is so weird that you're here because this has been on my mind, but I've been thinking about doing this. I've had people come by and say, hey, my friend has a booth over there, but she can't leave her booth, but she really wants to know more about estate planning. So business owners, especially, estate planning is really vital because what happens to your business if something happens to you? What contingencies do you have in place? Who's going to sign the checks? Who has authority to sign the checks? All of those things are important with thinking about making sure your loved ones are protected and the things you care about keep going on and your legacy is ensured.
Cecilia, I love how you're bringing your personal life into the attorney life because it does build that KLT factor. It does build that relatability. And they're like, ooh, I really enjoy this. I want to know more. So, how do you have people move past that fear and avoidance when it comes to things like wills and end of life planning? Because I know for me, I'll get on a tangent where I'm telling my kids, do this and do that. And I'm putting you in my will and make sure that I'm not buried with the bugs. And they're like, Mom, I don't want to talk about that. Even with my mom and dad, my mom passed away last year unexpectedly. So now I'm like, trying to talk to my dad about things. And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. It's already done. But they're not talking about it. They're not giving us, hey, this is in here. This is in my safe. So how do you get people to move past that fear and avoidance?
Oh, it's such a great question. So, one part is disarming that whole idea of estate planning being scary using humor through the pop culture references for sure. I do definitely get people calling me saying, how do I get my parents to plan? And I think that's on a lot on Gen Xers and millennials' minds because our parents are starting to age. Most of the time, When I talk to someone who wants to get their parents to plan, they haven't actually done their own planning.
They're worried about getting their parents' fortune.
Wow, that is so true.
So, my best advice, and I talk about this in my book, that you should get your own planning done first because it shifts the conversation dynamic. You're no longer a child going to your parents saying, "Are you going to take care of me? What am I going to get? How is this all going to work?" You're a responsible adult who has done the right thing. And you can say, "Hey, I just put my estate plan together. I heard that you need to review it every 3 to 5 years. Have you done that? I went through this process. It wasn't that bad. How was your experience?" Talking to them as an adult to an adult versus a parent as a child, that really helps the conversation. And this is what I learned when I was going through the process. My attorneys said conversations are really important because they minimize the risk of confusion and uncertainty. And I want to make sure that I know what to do. And I want to make sure you know what to do if something happens to me. It's reciprocal. It really shifts the tone.
So true. And we know that for entrepreneurs, we're also busy and doing everything else. But why is it important for entrepreneurs, being that their business at the time could be really their greatest asset, to have a plan in place? And also, what's that risk for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of entrepreneurs I speak to, they haven't really thought about if they get in an accident and they get hit by a car or whatever, how are things going to keep going? How are the checks going to be signed? Who has the legal authority to step into their place and make those decisions for the company? Or is it going to be frozen? Is it going to get thrown into probate? Is your company going to have to wait for a judge to make an order saying, "Okay, now this person has the authority to sign checks on behalf of this company"? There's just so much delay and uncertainty if you don't create a plan. And we don't know what the future holds, but we can plan for things to go right when things go wrong.
Wow. This is really hitting me in a lot of different ways personally. Even with clients, I'm thinking about a few things. So there was a book, a co-authored book that I was part of. It was a series, very popular series a few years ago. I'll leave it nameless just for the sake of the person, but they didn't have a plan. This will hit home with you, Tina, a little bit. So there was royalties tied into all their books, or the majority of their book series. And about 4 or 5 years ago, he had passed away, and the family inherited this book, the series of books, this business. And what are they going to do with it? They ended up shutting it completely down. And so all of that went away. And many people for many years that supported and invested a great deal of money into this legacy series. That's just one example of so many. So when I think of things like that, of course, we want people to reach out to you, right? So that they can reach out to you and really start peeling back the layers. But what are just some core elements that people should start preparing for? Maybe some documents or things that business owners or individuals should just have in a separate file.
Well, before all the documents, and actually, thank you for sharing that story. That reminded me of the Bob Ross, the painter. If you look up what happened with his estate, his son wound up getting nothing from his IP. So everything you see, all the new resurgence of interest in his IP, his family's not getting anything. What's even more important are the conversations that you need to have with people in a business with partners. How do they feel about being in business with your spouse if you die? If that's not a good prospect, then you should probably plan for some transition to happen. Life insurance is important for business owners, especially that He-Man insurance, because you're going to need that for the transition and for your family. And whatever happens to the business, maybe it does wind up being sold, but that life insurance money can help again with the transitions. So conversations like that are especially important for business owners. And then conversations with the people. Who would you want to raise your children if something happened to you? Who would you want to make your healthcare decisions? Are they the person who is ready for that responsibility? Would they take it on or would they feel overwhelmed? And you just don't know until you have these conversations with people.
I have 3 boys and they're all grown. And one of them are very, very analytical. And I'm like, you would probably be the one because the other ones I think would be too emotional and make those decisions on emotion instead of being analytical. And so I told him, you're going to be the one who says, pull the plug or not.
And some people, Tina, right? I think about this. I know you had family death, obviously, that you just went through, and I did as well. And I know that in that period of time, everyone always talks about, I don't have the heart to do that. Right. And so, really, while you're alive, putting some of those things in place, those directives, while you're alive, these are my wishes.
This is what mom wanted. She didn't want to be on life support. She didn't want to be a vegetable. So they make you feel like that because you already know those were put in place instead of, well, what do you think she would have wanted? Just those what ifs.
Absolutely. That clarity is so priceless because it prevents people from feeling guilty because they have to guess at your wishes. And it also minimizes the risk of family conflict because what happens if people disagree on the course of treatment? You're absolutely right. Just having that clarity, knowing it's such a gift to your family going through the worst day of their lives. You want to give them a roadmap, you want to give them something to support them through that.
Yeah, we went through something like that with my grandmother, and she had shared a lot of information with me as far as what she wanted, but nothing was written in place. So I had to execute everything. This is what we're going to do. But I wasn't the child, and I did have that guilt trip, and there were some upset in the family. So, yeah, I definitely think what you're saying is so important and crucial for us.
Absolutely. I love what you're doing, by the way, in your content online, because by bringing in this alignment in your brand, like who you are, people do get an opportunity to experience you way before meeting you, right? We've never met. This is the first time we've had you on our show. Obviously, it's a pleasure. We won't even have enough time to talk about everything on one episode. But when I dive into your content, it's so relatable. And I had a good time. I learned some things while watching it. That's what you're aiming for, right? But I also laughed as well, literally laughed out loud at a couple times because I was like, this is hilarious. I think one of them was when it comes to estate planning, even Baltimore had a plan and he had 7 souls.
I like that she brings that in because it does bring such a horrible piece of life's decisions.
It allows people to lean in a little bit more. And so I think that is another thing that people can just learn from you, aside from even what you're doing in such a crucial service. Okay, so we talked about obviously the first thing that people can do immediately is start having these conversations, right? This is something that can just happen. What are some maybe other components that people should start preparing or putting aside before even meeting with someone like you? I know that many times things are just all over the place. And in many cases, there are even unaccounted for bank accounts and life insurance policies and stuff just all over, right?
I'm so glad that you said that because as you're asking the question, I was thinking about my recommendation to start writing all your assets in one place. And then you started talking about the bank account stuff. Most people have not written everything they own in one place. That's part of my exercise for people when they come in to see me. I send them some worksheets. And one part is here's a worksheet to help you put together an asset inventory. And the asset inventory is really important for a few reasons. You really can't do estate planning until you have a good picture of what you own and how it's owned, because how something is owned legally is really critical to how to pass it on, to determining that strategy. And those details, most people are not aware of how the law works when things are owned a certain way. For example, my mom had this friend who his dad had passed away and his mom remarried, and she used a good chunk of her inheritance money to buy a home with her new husband. They wound up getting separated. She passed away during COVID, and the home went to the new husband's family because of the way that the property was owned, and her children didn't get anything. You would assume, right? Most people assume everything goes to your kids. So, one, definitely knowing how things are owned, so that informs the actual legal strategy. But just from a very practical perspective, there's this thing called the Department of Unclaimed Property. Have you heard of it? It's where accounts go to die, basically. or get leached off by the government. So if you have an account that gets forgotten, overlooked, it goes stale for a certain amount of time, it falls into this thing called the Department of Unclaimed Property. Over 10 billion just in California of unclaimed assets. California makes interest off of that money, as do all the other states that have it. I think nationwide it's over 60 billion.
I've been on those sites and it is pretty overwhelming. Also, in my earlier years of life, I was a vice president of a bank, and I can't tell you how often, after a certain period of time, they would come in, claim the assets, drill out the safe deposit boxes, right? And all of the assets, all the contents would actually be given to the state. So
Even something like getting into your phone or getting into your computer where all of your passwords are in, because you go to your computer, you pay all your bills, your passwords are automatically in there. Like even getting into the computer, what's the password? What's the password to your phone? All of these little things that you can only get into your phone with your eyes. How are people going to get in?
Yeah, absolutely. In this age of paperless statements, there's no way for anyone to know what you own if they're just waiting for bills to come in or bank account statements to come in. It doesn't work that way. And we could have 5 different email addresses. You mentioned the phone. That's the whole planning for your digital estate. That we are the first generation to really have to figure that out. The pictures on your phone, if you don't plan for them, your family might have to get a court order to access them if something happens to you.
that's true. And that is an asset.
Oh my gosh, what are we going to do about uncensored entrepreneurs if something ever happens?
First of all, our plan is to live to be 150, Tina. We already talked about this. Okay. But anything can happen. But you're absolutely right. I just thought about the other days, the little things that we let fall through the cracks. I just finished an entire project for a client, and I'm allowing them to make 4 monthly payments, even though the work has already been done, all in advance. I think about something like that. My wife, she probably wouldn't know. Those are some things to really think about. And I like this because this conversation, typically on the show, we're talking about marketing and we're talking about running your business. And yet we don't talk often about protecting your business. We don't talk enough about protecting your business. And it's probably one of the most crucial things, because what's worse than not having any business is protecting the business you still have and the income that you still have.
And a lot of people probably have a personal will, but do they have one for their business and their business assets? I wouldn't think, okay, who would take over my business?
I love that we're having these conversations. And so, for the sake of ourselves going forward and future conversations with you and our clients, what are some best ways that they can first initially reach out to you? Is it through your website?
Oh, yes. So my website is pretty easy. It's amo-law.com. And there's a link there to book a call with me and do a discovery call, or they have a contact form. So I'm only licensed in California, but because I'm part of this awesome personal family lawyer guild, I know attorneys in pretty much almost every state. I can definitely give you some good resources to give you some options for a heart-centered relational lawyer who will not just put you through transactional documents first process, but really get to know you and understand what's important to you and how you want to protect those things. And what is your risk tolerance? With business owners, asset protection is really big topic. What happens if your business gets sued? If you get sued, how do you protect your assets, right? You can build in layers of asset protection in your plan. It's going to be a little bit more complex and it's going to cost more. But what is your risk tolerance? Are you okay with not building that in? That's fine if you're not, but you have to know what your own personal risk tolerance is. How worried are you about your spouse remarrying in the future and getting taken advantage of by a new spouse?
Knowing Tina, she will come back to haunt him no matter what happens.
Make sure that you do not remarry. When they say about, I want you to be happy after I'm done, no.
Cecilia, can Tina legally put that in her will that he's not allowed to get married?
No, but you could put a requirement for a prenup if he wants to continue to manage certain funds, if you have a trust. Anyway, there are a lot of things, but I totally get what you're saying because I tell my husband all the time because I think he's a catch.
If I die, something else, I don't want you to be happy.
I know there's going to be a ton of women after him because he cooks, he fixes cars, he's got survival skills, all these things. But then I was explaining our estate plan and he was like, no, that sounds really complicated. I think the best plan is for me to die first.
Statistically speaking, men do have that way.
Statistically speaking, yeah, I do that sometimes in my meetings. I'm like, statistically speaking, men die first. So we're going to kill you off. What happens now?
These are some great takeaways. And I can't wait when Kelly comes home to tell her, if something happens to me, I do not want you to be happy. The first thing I'll profess from today's, we appreciate your time. And again, just bringing the lightheartedness into this, but real heart-centered work in itself, right?
I think this is the funnest conversation I've had with a lawyer ever.
With a lawyer ever.
Cecilia makes it fun and energizing.
So just for fun, one question I'll ask here as well is, obviously you have this love for everything from Star Wars to Marvel to Harry Potter, right? And the stuff that I see, and I even see you dress up in some of your content. Does your husband share that interest as well?
He's an undercover nerd, so he is a big Star Wars fan, but he doesn't outwardly project it. But there was a time when there was Star Wars Trivial Pursuit. I remember his cousin was getting so frustrated because he was like, "Who would know that?"
He knows it, but he doesn't wear the shirt, right?
The secret is out. What's his name?
His name is Rick.
You just have to start acknowledging that you love Star Wars.
He's also a big anime fan. Doesn't put that out there, but no, it's good. He'll go with me to those things and he'll watch anime with me.
I can't wait to dive into more of your stuff, and we'll definitely be talking in the future. I have quite a few clients in California. In fact, I was just out there a few weeks ago at an event where I was speaking, and I look forward to finding out more, connecting people with you. It's all about the Guild, and anything I can do to help contribute to the Guild, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time today on the Uncensored Entrepreneurs. We will definitely make sure that all of your contact information and everything is there on the podcast and any of our YouTube videos so that people have the ability to reach out and to connect with you. And we look forward to talking with you further in the future.
Oh, thank you. And can I just plug my book real quick?
Let's do that.
In November, I'm coming out with my first book. I've never written a book before. It's crazy. What a process. It's called Your After Credits Scene, A Nerd's Guide to Will's Trust and Legacy.
That is fantastic. That's pre-order, correct?
It's pre-order right now until November 11th. And if they want to go check it out, it is my website for that is amo-law.com/aftercredits. And that'll take them to either the pre-order page or the book bonus page for whenever the book comes out. So that'll be the landing page for that. I had so much fun writing it. I was at dinner the other night talking to my husband about it, and I was trying to remember all of the fan references. Star Wars, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Mass Effect, Zelda. There are a lot of nerd references, gaming references. It goes into not how to do estate planning necessarily, but why. Why is it important? What does this look like for families with minor children? How does this look like for blended families, single people, child-free people? That's a big one because I feel like there's no one really talking to people who don't have children about why they need to do estate planning. And then it goes into why DIY is not a good idea, breaks down some myths about estate planning, and gives some tips for how to find a good lawyer to work with.
Oh, I'm excited for this book. For those that are just listening, Cecilia Amo from Amo Law Legacy Planning is with us today. And although she's licensed in California, serving everyone in that state, she is part of a legal guild. And so she can refer some amazing people coast to coast. And also to extend her knowledge, she has her book coming up really soon. And that book is what a great resource to be able to put out the things that you've learned to people in other states and around the world.
I'm so excited about it. Thank you so much for having me and be able to share about my passion for making estate planning more relatable and a little fun through these pop culture references.
Well, you definitely did a good job at that.
Thanks for being here, Cecilia. We can't wait for our audience to get to know more about you. Check out your website and buy your new book.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. This was so much fun. You guys are so great.
Thanks for listening to the Uncensored Entrepreneurs. If you're getting value from the show, take a minute to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you tune in. It helps more bold entrepreneurs find us. Until next time, keep showing up, uncensored and unapologetic. And we'll catch you on the next episode.